Hello and welcome to the Hitchhiker's Guide to IT, a podcast brought to you by Device 42. I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney. Today we're talking about strengthening IT operational resilience in finance with DORA. What is DORA, you may ask? We're going to talk about that and much more with a great guest that I am pleased to bring on today. Jörg Hesselink is the CEO with DC Smarter. Jörg, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me.
Looking forward to getting into this conversation. Before we do, can I ask you to give us a brief bio, please?
Absolutely, yeah. So Jörg Hesselink, CEO of DC Smarter, after almost spending 30 years in IT and telecom operations in multinational companies, I decided to create my own company. And together with my co-founder, we created DC Smarter to share our experiences with other companies.
And we are definitely going to share some great information today in this podcast. So at the top of the podcast, I referred to DORA and how it's going to help us in a variety of different ways, which you are going to get into as we go on with this conversation. But let's start off here. What is DORA for people who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So DORA actually stands for Digital Operational Resilience Act. And we are a German headquartered company. So this is a European Union regulation, which allows us to strengthen the operational resilience of the financial institutions. And this is mainly to do when it comes to technology disruptions or cyber threats. So in simple terms, it requires the management of IT and telecommunication risk. And if you look at DORA, it applies actually to all authorized European financial entities, including credit institutions, investment firms, insurances. But it also applies to ICT, IT, and telecommunication third-party service providers who serve that industry. And I think what is most important is DORA within the European Union as a regulation starts on January 17, 2025. So it's around the corner and there's a very strong call to action.
Let's talk about something that we hear in the news, unfortunately too much, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Cyber attacks, data breaches. How does DORA come into play there?
Yes, so absolutely. So when you look into 2023 and based on a very recent report from the Global Technology Industry Risk Study, we have identified basically top 3 critical risks here. The first is data security and privacy. So this involves protecting sensitive data from unauthorized access and breaches. So this will ensure privacy of personal data, but also it helps us to comply with data protection regulations. The second part is digital business interruption. So this typically refers to the risk of disruption or even a loss of digital services due to incidents like you mentioned, cyber attacks. But it could be also because of a system failure or a data breach. And the third, which is often forgotten, is technology errors. So this risk involves potential mistakes or oversights in the technology services or products which are provided by those companies, which could lead to financial loss or even damage to its reputation.
Let's talk about the importance of ITAM. How important is it and why?
Yeah, another acronym, right? So ITAM stands for IT Asset Management, and in IT and telecommunication, this is really the heart. This is the heartbeat. So this is the center of your repository. It contains all the assets in your inventory. Now, it is super important for DORA as a regulatory framework because it enables this comprehensive visibility into the enterprise technology landscape. So it is mission critical for managing cybersecurity risk and ensuring rapid discovery or recovery from disruptions. And I keep on saying that all the time. You won't protect or improve something that you don't know you have. And without IT asset management, there is no point. You wouldn't even know how to start.
So we're all familiar with the movie, probably Finding Dory, which I thought was really interesting. In Europe, it's actually finding DORA, which is a perfect segue to my next question with this, because if people have seen the movie or if they haven't, Dory or Dora in Europe is looking for her parents and she doesn't know where they are. So can you tell me, York, how does one protect something when we're talking about Dora when it's unknown where the thing we're trying to protect actually resides?
Yeah, perfect question, and it's a great similarity in when you think about this movie. You think about DORA and finding home, and along the way identifying or finding things. It is very similar when you think about IT asset management, because the question is, where do you really start? And in IT and telecom terminology, usually you tend to start with what we call software discovery. So network discovery basically is another term we use. So we go out in the network, we discover things like DORA. And as we discover things, then the question still remains, where do we store this data? Do we understand the relationship in between these things which we discover? But also more important, where do they reside? Where are they exactly at that point of time? So, and this is exactly where we come in. We basically help companies not just to logically find things and help them to make sense and build these relationships and correlation. We even tell them where exactly at. And again, that on the end of the day helps you to find home.
Why is that so important, though? And then maybe can you go into the next step? So we've located what we're trying to protect, but then where do things go from there?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like maybe to talk a little bit about the challenges, if you don't mind, to get there. Why is it so hard? And I would say there are four things which I would like to call out. First, it's what we call visibility gaps. As we just discussed, finding DORA. Along the way, we deal with incomplete data on hardware and software assets across organizations. And that makes it very difficult to maintain an accurate inventory. But the second part is siloed processes. So we have fragmented and disjointed IT asset management practices across different departments. And they're hindering a holistic view of this technology landscape. Third, rapid technology change. So the fast-paced evolution of IT and telecom systems and devices, they require constant updates to asset inventory management strategies. And then last but not least, we're talking about the regulatory framework, compliance and complexity. So how can you navigate the web of regulations such as DORA and ensuring this comprehensive compliance across all the organization? So these are mainly the four challenges to introduce IT asset management and get ultimately to compliance.
So we know what DORA does now. Perhaps the bigger question at this point is, how do we use it?
Yes. So in fact, the way we go after that is we basically, once we know what we need to do, basically now we find a way to help the customer to get to the how I'm going to implement that. And what we're doing basically with the customers, we integrating IT asset management and physical inventory management. We combine the two. And how do we do it? First, it is because we provide this unified visibility. So we integrate IT asset management and what we call physical inventory management. And this then allows us to provide this comprehensive view. Secondly, we synchronize processes. So we align and streamline these workflows and procedures in between the digital world, but also the physical world, which ultimately then can be used by multiple departments. And I keep on saying that when we talk to customers, oftentimes we have IT and on one end, and we have facilities or manufacturing on the other hand, but they don't come together. So we synchronize the processes so that they talk the same language, they get together. And finally, and this is very relevant for information security, in particular DORA, is the risk-based approach. So as we have the data, we understand what we got and where at, we now need to ask ourselves the question, what's the risk for the business, and prioritize based on this security risk, and then take this proactive approach to mitigate any threats.
We've learned a lot here. I know I've learned a lot, Jorg, in this conversation. We are almost out of time, but I know people out there will probably have questions or they want to learn more about DORA and what we're talking about here today. So do you have any resources you can share, places they can go to learn more about what we're talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'd like to invite everybody to join us in an upcoming webinar, which we are hosting early July. Here, we're going to really talk about, again, the how to implement it. And we will even go straight down to the tools which can help the customer to fast track. Because remember, it's around the corner, January 2025, there is a call for action. But other than that, you can find me either via LinkedIn, Jörg Hesselink, through our website, dc-smarter.com, or through email anytime, so we can stay in touch.
Jörg Hesselink, CEO, DC Smarter. Jörg, thank you for your time and helping us to find DORA, what DORA does, how we can use it, and how it will make things better for a lot of companies out there. So appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to The Hitchhiker's Guide to IT, a podcast brought to you by Device42. If you'd like to hear more engaging conversations like the one you heard today, we encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. Thanks again for joining us. And of course, you can go to Device42's website for more information there if you'd like to learn more about the company as well. I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to connect with you on another podcast soon.